तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते कृष्णदास गोस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So I'll begin with reading the translation one more time for 11 and 12. Sometimes the conditioned soul is very aggrieved by the chastisement of his enemies and government servants who use harsh words against him directly or indirectly. At that time, his heart and ears become very saddened. Such chastisement may be compared to the sounds of owls and crickets. Due to his pious activities in previous lives, the conditioned soul attains material facilities in this life. But when they are finished, he takes shelter of wealth and riches, which cannot help him in this life or the next. Because of this, he approaches the living dead who possesses these things. Such people are compared to impure trees, creepers, and poisonous wells. So, chapter 13 and 14, in chapter 13, it's mostly the talk between King Rahugana and Jadabharat. And chapter 14 talks about the material world as the greatest forest of enjoyment. They're running quite parallel. They are allegorical story by Jadabharat, and the explanation is given by Shukadev Goswami. So Jadabharat concludes in chapter 13 his instructions, and Rahugana expresses his gratitude. And in chapter 14, by the end, the sages glorify Jadabharat here. So the allegory is a description of a merchant entering the forest, and upon Parikshit Maharaj's request, Shukadev Goswami gives its direct meaning in chapter 14, this chapter. And both allegory and the meaning have been depicted in these verses. So the verse number 11 and 12 talks about in chapter 13, verse number 5, around that similar comparisons are made. So sometimes his heart is pained by hearing the sounds of owls and crickets and invisible crickets. So, and here it is the same. He is aggrieved by the chastisement of his enemies and government servants who use harsh words. At that time, his heart and ears become very saddened. And he takes shelter of impious trees that have no fruits or flowers in chapter 13. And here it is, when his pious credits are finished, he takes shelter of wealthy men, the living dead, who cannot help him in this life or the next. So when we begin here, we see that we see the metaphorical explanations here. And the sounds of owls and the poisonous trees are meaning to say the subtle sufferings of the conditioned souls. This, these verses are basically they're the continuation of beautiful, um, sobering allegory of the forest of material existence, which is described by Jadabharat to King Rahugana. And in this forest, every element here represents one aspect of our journey through different samskaras that we have, and the wandering of the conditioned soul. So, before these verses, there were verses that were speaking about illusion, about the mirages of enjoyment, about where are the pitfalls, the hidden ones, the thieves, wild animals, etc. So in these verses, um, they're they're very subtle, but they're very real forms of suffering. The pain and insult of criticism, and the illusion of shelter in material world. Like what kind of uh, where are we taking shelter to? So let's take them one by one. In verse 11, the sounds of owls and crickets. So in the translation, Srila Prabhupada mentions that sometimes the conditioned soul is very aggrieved by the chastisement of his enemies and government servants who use harsh words against him directly or indirectly. And at that time, his heart and ears become very saddened. Such chastisement may be compared to the sounds of owls and crickets. The harsh words of others, their criticism, their gossip, their anger, they're like the shrill, unpleasant cries of owls and crickets in the night. So if we imagine it, a traveler in at night is traveling in a dark forest. He's already frightened, already tired, and and the whole night he's in the darkness. He's hearing the eerie sound which is disturbing, and there is no peace for the mind. And it's very similar to our lives. In this world, the conditioned soul suffers from the noise of criticism, accusations, allegations, harsh speech, hurtful words. Sometimes these come from enemies, sometimes from the government, sometimes even from our own family members or community. So the moment someone uses harsh words against us, our hearts and ears become very disturbed. We have the tendency to replay it again and again and again. And and when we keep replaying it again and again, we might have noticed from the brain psychology as well that the brain picks up negative emotions very quickly as compared to the positive ones, because we are still in the process of evolution where our brain we are training the brain to focus on the positive, and spirituality does a very uh, play a very important role in this. So because it has the tendency, it's naturally wired in such a way that it has the tendency to seek danger. In the ancient eras, um, this skill of focusing on the negative was to scan the danger. but it has been taken in a very different way now. So we often end up using our emotions. Why did they say that? How can they misunderstand me? Etc. etc. So these are the sounds of owls and crickets, which are echoing inside the heart and disturbing the peace of the heart. Now, Srila Prabhupada writes that the government's punishment or others' criticisms are simply manifestations of our own karma. And when we see as external injustice is often the Lord's gentle correction. Often I've been wanting to understand what karma is, because to me, karma seems a very, very tough or harsh, cruel word, wherein uh, we find that we have no control and we're being punished for something we don't even know. So the word karma has, I'm trying to see and reading such His Holiness Sachinandan Maharaj's uh, commentaries on a lot of things. Karma, however, means that there's something that needs to be corrected within us. This correction is what Krishna, the Lord, is bringing to us in front of us again and again and again and again, so that we can understand certain aspects of our own samskara, which is reviving itself. Because if there's something, if for example, if we have a gossiping tendency, this gossiping tendency is beyond our control. However, wherever there's this gossip begins, we are attracted naturally towards participating in the gossips, knowing about others. And then we feel really frustrated after that. And then we say, oh, my karmas are really bad, or I'm a fallen soul, etc., etc. These words have a meaning. Now, these words, if they have a meaning, the meaning is that we are going by the desires or the hankerings of the false ego, which is taking us away from Krishna. Now, this karma concept comes as a correction part in us. What we are suffering is for the correction that is needed in us. Therefore, every other individual is suffering in a different way according to the samskaras that it has created. The living entity has created life after lives. So we see this as external just injustice. We see this as, like, this injustice happening in the world and karma is to be uh, blamed, or but it is often Lord's gentle correction, which is, in other sense, some people say it as Lord's gentle correction. For some, it may be universe will keep bringing those things over and over again unless we correct it properly. So, and what is the reason that we are again and again trapped in this loop? Because ego doesn't like to be corrected. Our false ego, ahankar, survives on two things: praise and control. So the opposite of praise is criticism, and the opposite of control is something that is beyond, is surrender. So opposite of control is surrender, opposite of praise is criticism. Therefore, the conditioned soul cannot surrender. Therefore, he likes to control and is always in the hankering of praise. Therefore, criticism hurts his heart so much. So when either of those is taken away, praise and control is taken away, we feel deeply hurt. So even in our mental state of hearing different aspects where we have lost our mental peace, it's mainly the two reasons. We're not receiving right appreciation, right praise, and also things are out of our control. Therefore, instead of accepting and understanding that's Lord's gentle way of correcting us, and what is lacking in me that I can improve here, we rather go backwards by feeling hurt. So therefore, this verse teaches us something really profound, that we cannot silence the owls and crickets in the forest, but we can definitely rise above the noise. And how that is possible? It is possible by cultivating spiritual or spiritual hearing. And spiritual hearing brings a lot of tolerance. Tolerance is built when we hear about spiritual topics. Now, spiritual topics doesn't mean that we are fakely, superficially reading things or hearing things. It it uh, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave this formula: Trinadapi Shunichena Taroreva Sahishnuna Manina Manadena Kirtanya Sadahari. So Kirtanya Sadahari, actually, when we are in that Kirtanya Sadahari space, automatically there will be Trinadapi Sunichena Taroreva Sahishnuna. We will be humble, automatically will be humble, because when we are hearing more about Krishna, we know how insignificant. When we remember Krishna, we will know how insignificant our existence is. So, understanding that insignificant position that we are holding in this big, vast material world, where we are only this small dot of the dots. And when we know our real existence there, we become humble and we become tolerant. Because why we become tolerant? Because others are also tolerating us. So if someone criticizes, and if we react, if we understand it in a practical manner, the reaction shows that those reactions, when we are reacting instead of responding, those reactions show that, oh, there's still false ego lingering in my heart, lingering in my existence, that false ego. And if we pause and think, and we say, maybe Krishna is using these sounds to humble me, then these sounds of owls and crickets become purifying, even sacred. And honestly, this is very important to understand, that whatever people are saying, we can't always control, but we can always choose. The choice is in our hands to choose and take whatever someone's giving to us. We can choose which sounds we let it which sounds we let it enter in our hearts. So let the world's harsh sounds come and go, and let our ears be tuned to the holy names. Because those, when it knows how to be, this, it's a radio frequency. Because we are not able to put it in the right frequency, therefore the right thing is not entering our ears. And the moment the right thing enters our ears, the healing begins. Um, let's move on to verse number 12. Verse 12 talks about a pain of misplaced shelter. So the poisonous trees, creepers, wells, due to the pious activities in previous lives, the conditioned soul attains material facilities in this life, but when they're finished, he takes shelter of wealth and riches which cannot help him in this life or the next. And because of this, he approaches the living dead who possesses these things. Such people are compared to impure trees, creepers, and poisonous wells. It's very beautifully written, very poetic, but it's a very painful image. Poisonous wells. A person who's done good work in his previous lives, maybe charity, maybe truthfulness, maybe followed discipline, etc., etc. So in this life, he gets wealth, comfort, status. And when his karma count starts fading, or begins to fade, his wealth and position is threatened, then he clings desperately to material shelter. This is the pain of misplaced shelter. Instead of holding our, um or instead of taking the shelter of something powerful, we are taking the shelter of material or misplaced shelter. So what he does, he runs to other materially wealthy people, influential people. Like, in India, it's a very common thing to talk about positions or to have contacts with very influential people, thinking that they will protect me, thinking that they are going to take care of me, which is itself a very beautiful illusion, basically. So, so if we see this, it's understood, and Jarabharat mentions these people as living dead, those who are materially alive but spiritually asleep. And he compares them to poisonous trees, creepers, and wells. So, just as a tree may look green and inviting, not all the trees. I didn't know that we had one tree just when we first came to this house. We had a tree which was looking really beautiful, very green, very shady, very beautiful leaves, but it causes allergies. So the fruits may be toxic. Material wealth looks promising, but it can be deadly. It can be deadly when it is used for sense gratification. And Prabhupada says in this purport, enjoying wealth for sense gratification is like eating the fruit of a poisonous tree. Such activities will not help the conditioned soul in this life or the next. Why? Why would that be? Because karma is always temporary. The fruit of karma is temporary. We we it's like, how much you earn, you spend it. How much you spend, you finish it. So it's temporary. Whatever we have, money, beauty, intelligence, it's all borrowed energy. And in this borrowed energy, everything belongs, it establishes the fact that everything belongs to Krishna. He has lent it, he has lent it to us for higher purpose, for seva, for service to him. And when we misuse it, we become thieves. It becomes poison. And when we offer it back to Krishna, it becomes nectar. So Krishna himself gives this perfect instruction in 9.27, Yat karoshi yat ashnasi yat juhosi dadasi yat tapasyase kamtaya tat kurushva madarpanam. This one verse captures the whole purification of wealth. Whatever we are earning, whatever we are doing, whatever we eat, all that we eat, all that we do, all that we offer and give away, do it. All the austerities that we may be performed should be done as an offering to Krishna. Krishna himself has given this instruction. So when everything we have is offered to Krishna, it automatically is purified because Krishna is pure and it becomes sacred. And that wealth can uplift us and others as well. And when we claim it as me, mine, I, it turns against us. And it's like Prabhupada mentions here, like a forbidden apple in the purport. It's very beautiful outside, it looks like, wow, this is, we often praise, oh, wow, look at their weddings, for example, the influential people's weddings. We like, the whole world is amazed at the amount of money they spend, but it's poisonous inside. So the practical application can come up as use wealth, don't serve wealth. Use wealth. Wealth is a good servant, but a terrible master. use what comes to us in Krishna's service through charity, temple support, helping devotees, sharing prasad, etc. And avoid unnecessary accumulation, hoarding. One should not possess, even Bhagavatam emphasizes on this point that one should not possess more than what is needed. So therefore, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita often emphasizes this point that we should always be fulfilling the bare necessities, um, but not more accumulating more than it's needed. However, in a practical application of our life, savings is what we understand, because we have to, we, under the shelter of Krishna, also have to use our intelligence not to be dependent on others. So simplicity invites peace, and accumulation in our practically, if we have seen this, if we've experienced accumulation, definitely accumulation of anything invites anxiety. And um, the living dead means people whose hearts are disconnected from God. Spiritually dead means, spiritually asleep means, who are very, very, very much materially engrossed in their lives, like whose aim of life is to enjoy, go here, there, find enjoyment everywhere, earn, collect, spend, eat, the world food, for example. Um, it doesn't make sense. It's basically when we shut them, when we shut the spiritual aspect of ours and we disconnect ourselves from God, we are living dead. Sadhu Sangha is a way of reviving that. So Sadhu Sangha means association, and Sadhu Sangha means anyone who's in the association. In Krishna, in Bhagavad Gita Chaturshloki as well, we learned that once we are in the association and we are praising and enjoying the holy names, the holy pastimes of the Lord, Krishna himself guides us through that light. So every breath in that state reminds us of Krishna, and that's the real wealth of life. The the real wealth of life in this foreign forest of illusion is to be with Krishna. So when we talk about the analogy of the heart, the traveler in the forest is thirsty, exhausted, comes across a beautiful well covered by flowers, looks very inviting, but the water is poisonous. Another traveler digs small channel to connect that water to a sacred stream, and the same water flows through that channel. It's flowing and it becomes pure. So the difference between enjoying wealth for ourselves and offering it for service is, it may look very much same, but offering it for service destroys our ego, our tendencies to accumulate, and destroys our tendencies to collect karmas and deliver us. But everything depends on how we use it. So these two verses complement each other beautifully. Verse 11 warns us about the sounds of others' words and how ego reacts to criticism. Verse number 12 warns us about the illusion of wealth and how attachment traps us in the false shelter, or see or misunderstand that protection comes from other sources also, which is not possible. Both are subtle traps of the false ego. One attacks our honor, other tempts our security, and both can be overcome by one, or transformed by one attitude, which is Krishna consciousness. If we remember that everything, praise, blame, gain, loss, is arranged by Krishna for our purification, we become peaceful. And this is a very beautiful transformation, because if we keep blaming karma, if we keep blaming this and that, we are not taking accountability of our own actions in the present. We're not talking about past. So, finishing on this aspect, let's understand it this way, with a small prayer or something, or a request to Krishna. Um, let that be our aspiration, that we remain we remain undisturbed, we remain centered, we remain grateful when we hear harsh words from others. They are not to be taken in the heart. And sometimes we just don't have to understand that this is personally said to me. Sometimes we have to build compassion for the other person's journey, their state of life as well, where they are standing. So, and we can hear it only as Krishna's lesson to us, either to correct us or to develop compassion for others. And when wealth and comfort comes, we offer it back to Krishna in gratitude. Uh, this does not mean please don't take care of your health and your basic necessities. It means whatever it is, by serving Krishna, indirectly, this is helping us as well. So the same forest that once frightened us becomes illuminated. So material world is a place where we can do a lot of correction activities. We can correct ourselves. So this is a correction house, and we can correct ourselves and connect ourselves with that divine sound and understand the divine purpose of the soul and connect truly with Krishna in fine tuning ourselves with the right frequency we are in. So, oh Lord, may I not be disturbed by the sounds of worldly criticism, nor enchanted by the fruits of material prosperity. May I see everything that comes to me, joy or sorrow, wealth or want, as your gift. And may I use it all only to serve you and remember you. In our times of distress, Krishna is the only protector who will be there even if the world leaves us. So Krishna will be there. And if we take it in that spirit of understanding what is lacking in us, for sure our spiritual growth is guaranteed. So I'm going to stop here. If there is any comments, anything, any corrections, please feel free. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you for enlightening these two verses, such a nice outcomes you mentioned. And I really like your final prayer. Wish you should write more poetry like this, Mataji. It just came out from your heart. It is so resonates with me too also. Thank you, Mataji. You mentioned this, the criticism is hard to take, and it's a correction sent by Krishna. So you should take in that mood. And of course, there are so many people have different opinion of us, and we might react differently.
Krishna Chandra.
So how should we take it? Somebody is we try to help, and somebody doesn't like it, and then the help, of course, has been requested by them, but then you speak very nicely to correct them, but they are not in the mood of accepting. Then how should we react to that, Mataji? Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. They are in the mood of accepting. They have asked, if I'm understanding your question properly, how, if somebody approaches you and there's this tendency, and you have corrected them, but they have not accepted that correction. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Mataji. And they are very averse to something with some advice. it's not that somebody gives advice without asking, but somebody has asked you some advice, and then you give the options, and they're not liking it. So how should you react?
Mm. Um, I think when we advise anybody, it's always from a neutral stance that we don't want to control that person. Um, so that particular person has the agency. So we are offering an advice, and offering is always an open invitation, whether you like it or you don't like it. So offering is a space where if someone has approached me and asked for a piece of advice, I can offer an advice to them and leave it to them whether they want to accept it or whether they are ready to accept it that at this point or not. Uh, they may not be ready right now. They might have actually absorbed it, but they don't know they have absorbed it. But the ways are still the same. This means that there is some sense of controlling propensity within us as well, because the moment we give other person an advice, we become the expert in their life. So becoming an expert in somebody else's life is a controlling propensity that we have. So we might think that, oh, my advice is so good that this person might change, but the it may be really really good, but this other person may not be in that ready position to really understand and implement that advice. So he may be doing the same things over and over again because of his where he is being placed in that space, where is his placing. Is he really ready to take and implement that advice now or at some point or even in this life? So in this space, I understand that every person is an expert in their own life and in their own stories. And because they are expert in their life, they may not be ready, but we can only offer them an advice. We may not uh, want that the desire that they must listen to us and they must change, because I think that there is this situation which needs to be changed. So when the right time comes, we this creates a sense of compassion within us for the other person as well, because and losing that sense of control within us. So when we lose that propensity that, okay, this person is seeking some advice from me, I can offer the advice and then leave that space, that freedom space, for him or her to accept and implement, to not accept as well. Sometimes some people, eh, out of, they may not really understand what advice is given to us, and we may just say hanji hanji, yeah, 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 I understood, but they don't really know how to implement. So their ways remain the same always, and we see that even after repeated interventions into this thing, things have not changed. But it's not about you, it's about this other person who is not ready to make changes, and changes can't be forceful. um, was that helpful, Prabhuji?
Yes, Francis, thank you very much. Yeah, normally we just advise or discuss and give the option to them. We don't want, if they don't want to implement, it's up to them, because they
Yeah,
ask for it and we give, and it's their option to implement or not. I mean, we shouldn't get so annoyed or, yeah, there's
yeah,
no like controlling propensity. Just somebody asks, we give, and we leave it to them to whether they like it or not like it. They want to implement it or not. It's up to them. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you for repeating. Wonderful point.
yeah.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any controlling motive. That's a main important point. Thank you, Madhuri, for
Thank you,
everybody.
Prabhuji. Thank you.
Have we still got some time? Anybody got any reflection points to share or any queries? So many points been made in this class by Mataji and a lot of research. So anybody want to share their reflections? Most welcome. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Mataji. I just want to thank you for the beautiful class. It's very relevant to our everyday life, and it takes quite an effort to, yeah, to behave, to let our ego not overtake our devotional mood. And yeah, I've had quite a few takeaways from the class about the training our ego and about gossiping and stuff. So we got to be really careful, especially with obligation to make no offenses. Yeah, thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you. Yes, there's a lot of it's very philosophical when we learn things from a theoretical point of view, but theory does have a subtle practical aspects, and practical aspects do have theories. So philosophy in Srimad Bhagavatam is telling us a lot how to connect with Krishna. And what I'm understanding is connection is very easy, but because we are not choosing to connect, this is where our coverings are stopping us, our samskaras are stopping us. And to conquer that, even Bhagavad Gita, we've been talking about it. So anyone who's reading Bhagavad Gita may understand the workings of the mind, how our mind is working. And once we see the subtleties of our mind, we will know how to control it. And it's not easy. It's really not easy. And once we conquer it, connection. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that the connection and the mercy is always there. It's just we don't know how to connect. So our whole life goal is to know, to understand how to connect. And therefore we are making every efforts every morning, every afternoon, every evening. We some goals, some purposes, some this, some that. This way or that way, we are trying to connect. And sometimes we are successful in some for some days, and sometimes we just come back to the same loop. However, there will be connection once we understand. So that's how our soul is evolving. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Hare Krishna Dandavad Pranam. Thank you. Thank you very much for a very insightful and so many very, very thoughtful points you brought out. Thank you so much for that. Especially I like your view that the material world, looking at all even the negatives in a positive, so-called negatives in a positive light. And so in that sense, the material world is not some place just to get out of or escape from, but actually, as you mentioned, it's a place of learning. It's a place of actually, it's like a very tough training ground, and there is no option, but we have to train and somehow purify ourselves before qualifying to get out of this place, not just a place to escape from. Thank you so much for bringing
Thank
that.
you.
Bringing
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
I also, I always had this question: if we go to spiritual world in this way, let's say Krishna gives us this mercy, what are we going to do there, basically? Because we are so eye-centered, we are definitely going to create a lot of chaos there. Sorry for my imagination, but yeah. So therefore, Krishna has given us a beautiful chance here to correct ourselves so that we are rightly, like, to be in a king's palace, we must have some qualities like the king to serve the king. And in this space, we are very much like beggars, or we're very much like homeless people, or I'm not tagging anything. What I'm trying to understand here is uh, if our training is not enough, then going there or running away from spiritual from material world makes no sense. So it's actually going to, so the whole creation is designed in such a beautiful way that it's giving us that training. I really like that word, Prabhu, training. Thank you. So if we are finished, then Manvaj Prabhu, shall we stop here?
Thank you. We'll stop here. Vanchakalpatarvayasya.
Yasya kripa sindhyavasya pitanan
पावनेभ्यो
Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
वैष्णवेभ्यो
Ananta Koti Vaishnavendra ki jai. Grace Radha Padma Mata ji ki jai.
पाद की
Path
जय
ki jai.
नंदे हरि हरि बोल
Hari Hari Bol.
नोटिस
Hare
टू
Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna.
Have a lovely day.